Hello, welcome back to the channel. Now today's video, I'm going to show you how to turn this old steel bin into an improvised field oven. Stay tuned. Yeah, so welcome back, and thanks for taking the time to tune in and watch the videos. Yeah, so improvised field oven. Something we used to do in the army many years ago, that is to take an old steel bin or trash can, wherever you're coming from in the world, and turn that into an improvised field oven. Now, why would you want to make an improvised oven, you may ask? Well, in an SHFT situation, you might have lost your conventional ways of cooking your food, and this is just another alternative. Now, before we start, I just want to say the steel bin I've got is galvanized. And galvanized, when heated, can produce fumes. The zinc they use for galvanizing it, protect it from rusting. When it burns off, it can produce toxic fumes. So make sure, if you are doing this, what I suggest is you have an open fire and you burn off all the outer coating first before using this, especially to cook food, because it can leach into the food as well. Saying that, we use these all the time in the army during training exercises without any problems. Some would probably argue that the fumes and the smell of the burning steel bin would probably improve the flavour of the cooking, but I won't comment on that. People forget that the Army Catering course is the hardest course to take in the British Army. As of today, no one yet has passed it. Now for this video, I'm only doing this for demonstration purposes only. If you were doing this for a real life situation, make sure you're in a well vented area, and like I said, I suggest you burn off all the outer coating first. So later on in the video, when I do have the oven set up, we are going to cook them 2 squirrels that I shot the other day and skinned them. So stay tuned for that. Let's have a look at it. So the first thing you're going to do is find a suitable piece of ground. If you can, find it nice and level, flat, but it doesn't have to be, because what you're going to do is dig a hole, basically, and bury the bin halfway up. So I found a piece of ground here, just by the Bushcraft tent, where we do courses, and that way, when this is done, this will be an addition to the Bushcraft and survival courses, where an improvised oven can be demonstrated. So I got a bin, I've got a bit of ground, and I've got my shovel. So the next thing I do now is just clear a bit of ground and then start digging a hole. So the hole needs to be big enough to lay the bin down on its side and be half submerged. Okay, so that's what we're going to do first, then we'll take it on to the next step after that. So just bear with me while I dig this hole. I won't film it all, it's going to be a bit boring. Once I've dug the hole, got the bin in place, I'll bring you back. Right, see you in a bit.
Some time later.
Well, as you can see, I've dug the hole and got the bin inside. So about halfway up, or if you've got handles on the bin, more or less to the handles, just like this. Now keep the soil you've dug out to one side, because we'll use that later on. Next thing now is to dig your fire pit. Obviously it's going to be a wood-fired oven. So we're going to dig a fire pit, and a vent at the front to allow air, and a vent at the back to allow smoke. So that's the next job, more digging. Hooray! Right, let's get to it. Right, the hole is complete with the fire pit and a vent for the flue, and obviously an air vent at the front. So I dug a fire pit here, left these 2 levels to support the bin. And there's a vent for the flue to go at the back, and then sloped it down at the front for air vent. Now if you see my video with the Dakota fire pit, similar sort of thing, make sure you've got airflow at the front where the wind's coming from, and then a vent at the back for the smoke to come out of. With these ledges, you could cut them out and line with bricks, which is what I'm going to do now, because in a wooded environment there's lots of roots in the ground. I don't want any fire to move up the roots. There's only a slight possibility of that, but it can happen. So what I'm going to do is cut them out now, the 2 ledges, and get some bricks to support the bin. Now another way of supporting the bin, on bricks you can put some metal slats across, but the idea of this method is if all you've got is your garden and a shovel and perhaps a pick, you can form your own improvised oven. With the flue at the back as well, or the vent at the back, you could line it with bricks, stones, but what I'm going to do, I've got a bit of flue pipe spare in the yard somewhere, so I'm going to use that. Just dig these 2 bits out now, and then put some bricks in, and then I'll show you the next step. Right, I've lined my fire pit now with some bricks. Let's say if you had a good clay soil, you could form it with them ledges, soil ledges. That'll be good enough. But because I'm in the wood, the ground a little bit clay at the bottom, but it's a bit dry at the top. Plus I've got all the roots. It's a safer job to have it lined with the bricks. So just sit the bin on top of that. As you see, there's loads of room here for the fire pit. This will be the oven door. And we just got to put the flue at the back. So that'll just go down in the hole, rest it on the bin, just like that. There we have the makings of the field oven. Now you could just use it like that. I've seen a few boys use it out in the field where it's above ground, just elevated, like say on bricks or on ammo boxes, and have a fire underneath and use it like that. But with an oven, really you want to contain the heat as much as possible, so that's what we're going to do in the next job. We're going to take our pile of soil, we're going to mix a little bit of water with it, create a bit of mud, and then we're going to form it around the outside of the bin, around the flue pipe, and then pile it all on top, so that way it will insulate and keep the heat in the oven. That's the idea anyway. So let's just get on with that, and then there's one more job before we light the fire and cook some food. Now with the mud, you don't want it too wet or too dry. You just want it wet enough so you can form a shape. Remember the old mud pies you used to make when you were a kid? That's all you want. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to form this around the flue, around all the gaps, chuck a bit of soil on the top, and then be ready for the next stage. So I'll catch you on the flip side. Once you put your mud layer on the top, the next thing you're doing is put any loose soil on there, and if you're in the garden, obviously your turf, your sod, that'll go over the top. That'll form a nice insulation layer to retain the heat. Right, so I'm going to get the last remaining bits of topsoil now, cover this over, and then we're going to look to put a tray inside the bin to put the food on. So yeah, let's get on with that. So now we've got the oven set up, we've dug the fire pit, we've got it supported, we've got it covered, insulated, we've got the flue in. The next thing we've got to think about now is your pot. Where are you going to put your pot in the oven? Now the idea of the oven, like I said, you want that circulated heat all around your cooking pot or whatever you're cooking in the oven. So you want to keep it off the bottom of the actual oven itself. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. I've just got a couple of old trays off disposable barbecues. I'll just put them inside. They don't fit perfectly, but they'll do. They'll keep the, let's say, the cooking pot or whatever you're cooking off the bottom of the oven. But again, you could just use a couple of bricks, like say, just to keep your cooking pot elevated. Anything you can find really will obviously not burn up in the heat, and just keep that circulating air around your cooking pot. So once they're in place, it's time to get the fire going. So that's it guys, there's your improvised field oven, utilising a steel bin. The fire's roaring now, smoke's coming out the flue, just gotta wait for it to heat up. So the next job is to find something to cook in the oven. That's where them 2 squirrels come in, which I shot and skinned the other day. Let's get to that. Now with the fire going and the oven warming up nicely, now it's time to prepare our meal. So we're going to cook it in the Maddock Outdoors Dutch oven. So this cookware from Maddock Outdoors is brilliant. Obviously I said it in the shop and I've used it myself. But it's carbon steel, so it's half the weight of cast iron, but it does exactly the same job. I pre-seasoned these a while ago at home. I covered them in oil and baked them in the oven. I've done it about 3 times. I've used the skillet or frying pan before, and yeah, it works superbly. So I'm going to try the Dutch oven this time. Comes with a little handle for the lid. So I've got my meat, which is the squirrels, and I'm calling this the bug out survival stew. So the scenario is you manage to trap or kill your meat source, skinned it, prepared it for a meal, but you want a few veggies as well. So it's the SHTF situation, and during the rounds you've managed to scavenge a few tins. Tomatoes, carrots, potatoes, some peas and some mushrooms. Unfortunately no spam, but you've got the squirrels instead, haven't you? Put these together with the squirrel, we should have a half decent meal, hopefully. Right, so I've just put the pan in to heat up. While that's heating up, we'll prepare the squirrel. There are several different ways you can do it. You could boil your meat first, then pick it off the bone. But what I'm going to do with this one is just quarter it. Basically just cut it down the middle, cut the leg off. Then you've got 4 pieces of meat. And a few bits of hair and whatnot, but it's a survival situation, isn't it? So there we are. Just chuck them back in a bag for a bit. This is the bigger one, the male. Make sure you've got a good sharp knife. This is the Mora Bushcraft. Looking at this one, because it's a bit bigger, I'm going to cut this into 3. So there's the leg. And there's another 2 pieces. So there we are. We got 10 pieces of meat in here. So yeah, should be a good meal. Right, let's go and see if this pan's ready. Put some oil in, the onions, the squirrel, we'll put that back in the oven. Right, while we're just waiting for that to brown off, every survival kit should have a tin opener, so we'll just pre-open these tins. Oh yeah, see that? Browning off just nice. Now the next job is just to cover this with a bit of flour. Yes, you might not find flour in a survival situation, but you may be lucky. Might stumble across it somewhere. So there's the flour. You can see it's just coated all the meat and the onions, soaked up all the oil. When we add our juices now, our veg juice or water, that will help create a nice thick stew, hopefully. So we're just going to put some pheasant. So just put the juice of the carrots in, and the peas, bit of water, bit of salt and pepper. Right, so we just put that back in the oven now. I won't put the veg in just yet, because it's pre-cooked, being tin stuff. I don't want it to turn into mush. Oh, right, look at that. So it's been cooking now for about half an hour. And while I was cooking, I went and got a spatula. So what I'm going to do now is add my veggies. So with the carrots, tomatoes, peas, spuds and some mushrooms. It may not be cordon bleu, it may not look the best, but in a survival situation, this will keep your family and you going. Right, I'm going to put that back in the oven now for another 30 minutes or so. Then I'm going to take it out and add something special. I'm going to make something, add to this, and just to finish it off. So stay tuned for that. So what I'm going to do to finish it off is make some dumplings. Now dumplings you usually use suet and flour and water obviously, but I am going to suet, so you can use butter instead. So basically it's twice the weight of flour to butter. Form breadcrumbs by rubbing it all together and add a little bit of water. Just do it in the bag, keep it nice and clean. So this is my little dumpling. I'll make a few of these. Stick them in the stew, leave about 30 minutes and be ready to eat. Oh, look at that. Right, I'm going to put my dumplings in now. They don't want to be too big, otherwise they're not going to cook. So they want to be just smaller than a golf ball. So that was at roughly 120 grams of flour, roughly 60 grams of butter. So what's that done? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dumplings. Right, we're going to get this back in the oven now for about 30 minutes. I'll leave the lid off this time and then hopefully be ready to taste. Now you may have noticed I've got a wok on top of the flue. That's just to regulate the flow of air going through the fire. So if I want to get more heat, I'll take that off and the more air will draw through and burn a bit hotter. It's a bit of an art form to cooking on fire, especially with these ovens. You know, there's no way of regulating the heat as such as you would a normal conventional oven. So yeah, you just got to use your wits a bit. If you want it hotter, like I say, get more air in it, get more fuel on it. If you want less heat, obviously reduce the airflow and reduce the fuel. Right, we've had about enough time for the dumplings to cook, I think, so we'll just check on that. Oh, it's bubbling away there, lovely. Look at that. That should be done, so let's put a lid on that. We'll put a lid on the stew and we'll go and try it out. So there we have it, the bug out survival squirrel stew. Now, like I said before, it's not cordon bleu and it doesn't look the best, but it smells great. Let's see what it tastes like. Let's just try one of these dumplings first. They're a little bit doughy. They probably could have done with another 5-10 minutes. Now what about the squirrel? Here's the leg. Whoa. It's hot. Bit of leg meat. Yeah, it's fine. So it's dark meat. Just take some meat. Veggies. Yeah, it's a nice stew, that. That is good. Of course, in a survival situation, you can add to this, you know, whatever you can find, whatever you got. You could forage for mushrooms, wild garlic, anything like that, and go in the stew. The pan, just scraping the bottom, nothing stuck. Yes, these pans from Addict Outdoors, they're great and perfect for that little improvised oven. But just look at this squirrel meat. So there we are, guys, there's the video. Took some squirrel meat, which I processed in the previous video. Made an improvised oven out of a steel bin. Dug a hole, built a fire under it, covered the bin. Used a carbon steel pans. Very important to use the right sort of pan in an improvised oven. It's no good using these cheap, thin pans. They wouldn't last. So yeah, good, solid carbon steel pan, like this one from Addict Outdoors. And then made up my survival stew. Put it all together, a great success. So if you do like my videos, please think about subscribing and hitting the thumbs up. Hit the notification bell. And if you want to see some more videos, check that one out. And that one. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. All the best.